Ginga ginga.
Hello everybody, Infinite Shinjo here, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Anime. Gosh, it feels like forever since I've said that. But I am here because you guys have given me 3 more topics to discuss, and I figured just to tackle them all in one video. So I'm not going to waste any time. Let's get started, and first up is Dragon Ball Deliverance. I found the thumbnail for episode 2 just searching online. I hope I'm allowed to use it. If I am, then that's all well and good. If not, well, I'll figure that out later. But this is interesting because from what I can understand, it's after GT but before Super. I'm not exactly sure. I don't actually know how they explain the context of everything. But basically you got this whole race of, I think, Namekians that are basically fighting the, let's say, the new generation of Dragon Ball heroes. I didn't even mean to say Dragon Ball heroes, it just came out like that. But basically, there's no Goku, which a lot of people probably would like. Instead, the main one is Gohan, which is actually kind of cool because I think a lot of people like Gohan, especially more than Goku. You still have characters like Vegeta still being here, Goten and Trunks have aged up, you have Oob of all characters, and you have Pan and Bra, so considering that they're grown up, I can kind of tell that it's at least 10 years after? I'm not exactly sure. I think they actually explained it in an episode, but I can't remember. But basically, this is just a fan-made creation, much like a lot of other Dragon Ball series end up being on YouTube. And from what I've seen, it's not bad. The art style in the first episode is kind of rough, because at the same time, they are, for lack of a better word, amateurs. So a lot of stuff just takes money and they might not have it or whatever reason. At the same time, they're still all trying to figure everything out, so that could be it as well. But episode 2 really takes the art to, I don't want to say the next level because that just sounds super generic and everybody always says that. But the art in episode 2 seems a lot better, which I think there's like a year gap in there, so I can kind of understand. And like I said already, I like how characters like Oob, Pan, and Bra look grown up, because at first I honestly thought one of them was Bulma, which actually makes sense because Bulma is the mother of Bra. I think I have that right. Then Pan is the daughter of Gohan. I'm pretty sure I have that right, but just in case, I'm like 95% sure. And the third thing that I liked is some of the voice actors and actresses really fit the character. Like, I think it was the Vegeta voice that really sounded much like Vegeta. It actually sounded like Vegeta. But to be fair, there are some characters that it's not hard to do a voice for, especially since a lot of people do Vegeta voices because it's just honestly easy to do. Not saying that Chris Sabat's voice is super generic, but like, everybody can do a Vegeta voice. But the things that I didn't like about it is the art style. Now, I did give props to the art style at first, but the art style is limited even though it does look good. So there are some times that it's hard to know what exactly is going on, especially in big fight scenes. Going off of what I mentioned earlier, even though some voice actors and actresses really fit the character, some of them just sound like their microphones that they record with are really cheap. Which that goes back to what I said earlier about money being a potential issue. But overall, I obviously have more good to say than bad about it, because at the same time, I don't want to be too harsh because it is just a fan series and I don't know how much time or effort or money was put into it. For all I know, it might be just a little fun hobby that they're doing on the side. But I only saw through the first 2 episodes because by the time I got through episode 2, I saw that episode 3 was 40 minutes long and I thought, no thank you, and just backed away. Sometimes it's just hard to watch 40-minute videos at a time. Although it'd be kind of ironic if I posted a 40-minute video on my channel before. which I think I probably have. But yeah, overall, Dragon Ball Deliverance, a good series. I think the person that made this, I think their name is Luke. I want to say it's Luke. I think there might be some adjective in there somewhere. I'll post a link to the channel in the description, and I'll post a link to the channel on the screen right now so you know exactly what the channel's name is. But I think it's Luke. If it isn't, I'm going to look very silly. But the next one that I'm discussing is Demon Lord Retry. I didn't realize how fuzzy the picture here looked, but here we are. For those of you that have been around a long time, I actually reacted to the first episode of this a long time ago. I just had to make some edits to the screen because it'll be copyright otherwise. Just recently I got a comment saying about discussing this anime for Let's Talk Anime. Which is fair because when I reacted to it, all I did was just react to stuff that was happening on screen. And I didn't really have much time to think about what's happening. So just for a little bit of a backdrop, you have the main character, which I can't remember his real life name for the life of me. He's making a video game. He's about to close it down at midnight. And instead of it actually closing down, he gets sucked into the game. That's right. It's an isekai, baby! But then from there, he goes through the usual isekai crap. But let me get into the stuff that I liked first, before I rag on it too much. First of all, Aku's design and her voice are absolutely adorable. Like, I don't know for sure. I want to say I thought about checking it out, but I don't remember if I actually did. I'm wondering if this came out first or Re:Zero. I feel like Re:Zero came out first. Because just like you have a character that has hair covering one eye, and she just looked absolutely adorable. I wouldn't be surprised if Aku took reference from Rem, or Rem took reference from Aku. The only difference I can say is that Aku has two different color eyes, which I guess makes it unique. But just the fact that she has hair covering one eye doesn't necessarily mean that she's copying Rem. But they're both isekai, so it's not that far of a stretch to make. Although I am grasping at straws to find some sort of connection. But it is a little unique that the main character actually gets trapped in the video game that he made himself. Most of the time with like Konosuba or any other anime, it's a game that they're just playing in their off time. It's not a game that they actually make. 90% of the time, a character that gets transported into a game is just a loafer, is a neat. They don't do much. So the fact that you have somebody here that actually made a game is just kind of cool. It's a little minor thing that happens in an episode. I think it was episode 2. No. It was episode 1. Even though it's a little cheesy, I do like the line that Hakuto told Aku about not letting anybody define her worth. At the same time, he might have been kind of breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience, but you know. The next thing that I liked about Demon Lord Retry was the fact that they have references to Google and Yahoo in the second episode. I don't remember exactly what their pseudo name for it was, but I just remember seeing that and I'm thinking, that's definitely a reference to Google and a reference to Yahoo. Now for this next pro that I have, I'm going to have to explain a little bit of the second episode. So, the second episode introduces a character called Luna. And Luna is just kind of there for the most part. Doesn't really do anything for me personally, even though she does have pink hair. But I don't remember the context. Even if I did, I'm not going to get into it specifically. But basically what ends up happening is Hakuto ends up spanking her. Which is kind of strange, especially in the world we live in. But hey, he spanks her. Whatever. But later, Hakuto and Aku are at a restaurant, and Luna just bursts in to start ranting and raving about anything, and Hakuto, with just the calmest voice possible, asks her to sit down. And if that was intentional, good job on the show itself, because it's gonna hurt like heck if she tries to sit down after being spanked. Again, not sure if that was something that was intentional or not, just something I wanted to point out. But, unfortunately, I have to bring up the stuff that I didn't like about it. And this one just kind of covers over everything. It just seems kind of bland. Like, okay, guy gets transported to an isekai world. Nothing new there. Like I said, they do kind of twist it because it's actually a game he made. But like, it's an isekai world. We've seen it millions of times. And this is something that I'm not sure why they did it. In, I think it was both episodes, 1 and 2 that I watched. That, just like all the generic isekai crap that happens, all these tropes, like they literally make jokes about it. Like, okay, there was a joke that I liked in the first episode where Hakuto says, now I wish I would have watched more isekai anime. And that's kind of clever. But there's a fine line to be drawn there. Like, if he would literally just walk out and say, I'm the generic, overpowered isekai protagonist. Like, there are some jokes about isekai anime tropes that kind of land. But there were some that's just like, okay, just because you bring up the isekai tropes doesn't mean that you think you're clever about it. That'll be like watching a harem anime where a guy's getting a shower and he's thinking, now be about the time that I lose my towel and go around naked and a girl sees me naked. Or vice versa, now be a time that I see a girl naked or something like that. Like, if you call attention to the fact that you're making fun of these tropes, it just makes it more obvious. And honestly, kind of lazy. And these next two might be a little bit harsher, but I feel like it doesn't border that rude. Especially since you know I like Aku anyway. But like, why does Aku have to continually make the joke of, I don't know what that thing is? What's a Japan? What's soap? Like, okay, the first couple of times it was kind of cute. But like after the 20th time of her saying, I don't know what that thing is, it just gets kind of old. And the next one, does Aku have short-term memory? Because at the very end of episode 2, she still calls him Demon Lord. And earlier in the episode, he says, stop calling me Demon Lord because you're gonna make a scene. But she calls him Demon Lord anyway. Now I get at the same time, if she's used to calling him Demon Lord, it's gonna be a hard thing to translate out of. But like, between her constantly saying, I don't know what that thing is, and continually calling him something he doesn't want to be called, I'm legitimately wondering her brain capacity at this point. But those last two were kind of more in fun. It's just stuff that I noticed in the show. Overall, I think I have the same thoughts that I did when I reviewed it and reacted to it before. It's not bad, it's just generic. But wrapping up this episode, we have Back Arrow. Now, Back Arrow is airing right now, as I'm recording this, in the winter 2021 anime season. I highly doubt that it'll still be airing when this video is posted. Just for context for this, and actually all of the stuff I review in this episode, I've only watched the first 2 episodes of each one. But somebody suggested for me to watch Back Arrow and said if I like Gridman, then I'll like this. Which I can totally see the comparison because they have giant robots. Even more on the nose is the main character loses their memory. Now before I get into it, before I go into the good and bad of this, I just want to say that I was really confused at the start. Like, I was all ready to watch the first episode, but I knew very little about it. So when I saw all this stuff going down, and then the songs start playing, I literally paused it and I'm looking around, is this the show that I downloaded? Because I knew that that wasn't what the opening sounded like. And for some reason, they had the ED in place of the opening in the first episode. I don't know why. Maybe because of spoilers, because a lot of the characters weren't introduced yet. But like, I was just totally confused at first. And I feel like it's one of the first times that an ED has replaced an OP in an episode. Obviously, there's probably been more times, but it's the one time I can think of. But the first thing that I liked is it's a very cool concept, just from the first episode. because it's like Gridman, but in a way it isn't, because you use these like bracelets or whatever to transform into these giant robots, and you have your convictions, which, like, say for example there's a character that has a conviction that says, I'm not gonna get hit. So when they're in giant robot form, they can like avoid hits or something. Their conviction is what powers the robot, essentially. And just the designs alone are really cool. It seems like an early 90s anime from like stuff that I watched. Because, well, primarily Back Arrow's design itself is very reminiscent of early Yu-Gi-Oh! With the crazy hair. But just the character designs all over just look like early 90s stuff, which is very cool. And lastly, the opening is an absolute bop. And I'm not talking about the opening that was disguised as the ending. The actual opening by Lisa is absolutely a bop. I love it. Honestly, that's really all positive I have to say about it. Again, I've only seen 2 episodes, so a lot of the stuff might be stuff that I didn't notice or didn't acknowledge or whatever. But let's go to the cons. And weirdly enough, the first con that I have, actually the only con that I have written down, is Back Arrow. He's an interesting character, and at the same time you gotta walk a fine line, because like in Gridman, the main character loses his memory, but he's basically a brick wall. He doesn't do much in the story himself, he doesn't have much of a personality. But you have Back Arrow here, who's just kind of over the top and kind of out there. Especially when it comes to him getting naked. Because for some reason this show has a fascination with naked people. I don't want to know. But like, he burst out of the pod or whatever, and he's completely naked. And every time that they try to give him clothes, tell him, please put your clothes on. Especially when, what's her name? Atlee gives him, like, undies or whatever. He always says, I have to repair the undies, lady. Which, just like, dude, please. If there be one character that I couldn't stand in the show, I don't want it to be the main character, but unfortunately it is. He's just kind of annoying at times. Now, he did mellow out a bit in episode 2, but he didn't make a good first impression in the first episode to me. But the show itself has a cool concept. I just feel like if I don't like the main character, I'm not going to be invested enough to keep watching. But the idea that these giant robots that are called Bryhart are engaging in battle and the loser dies, but when Back Arrow's involved, the loser doesn't die. That itself is an interesting concept. But at the same time, I've only seen 2 episodes. And from what I've seen, I'm not really too eager to watch more. Let me know if you're watching more of it, but honestly, I'm just not vibing with it at the moment. I don't know. Maybe give it some time and cool my head and see if I like it better later. But like, I don't know. Just not really vibing with it. I really like the other characters outside of Back Arrow more. Especially Atlee, because she has the backstory with how her dad used to be the sheriff, but now she is. But that is it for this episode of Let's Talk Anime. If you enjoyed, hit that like button down below, subscribe if you haven't. If you have any recommendations for Let's Talk Anime, leave them down in the comment section. At the moment, I don't have any recommendations, so don't be alarmed if it takes a long time for another episode of Let's Talk Anime to come out. But I will see you in the next episode. Momentai.